Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Nelson Samuel. I represent the Federal Investment Agency of the Government of Malaysia, known as the Malaysian Investment Development Authority. First of all, I would like to thank the organizers for inviting me to speak at the Think Global Conference ITC, Foreign Direct Investment Day. I'll be happy to share a presentation for potential investors looking at Malaysia, and it's called as Doing Business in Malaysia. Next slide, please. Ladies and gentlemen, so this slide actually, I would like to explain the rules and jurisdiction of the Malaysian Investment Development Authority, which is widely known as a one-stop center for investors looking and doing business in Malaysia. As you can see on the screen, we have promotion. We are divided into 4 functions: the promotion, and we are also the approving authority, and we also do after-sales service, which is implementation, and also matching, basically between foreign investors and local investors. I would start with the top left. On the promotion part is where I am based. I'm one of those MIDA overseas offices today in the world, and we are the frontliners. Basically, we look at facilitating investors' inquiries. We are the first to do targeting and outreach programs to US investors in my case, because I am based in New York, and I would be targeting most of the Eastern-based US companies as well as Canada. Now, moving on to approvals, MIDA is basically the one-stop center for your approvals for the manufacturing sector. We also are the approvals authority for representative office and regional office and R&D setups in Malaysia. We provide tax incentives facilitation, also matching grants and expatriate position facilitation, and also finally custom duty exemption for any machinery and equipment, as well as raw materials that are brought into the country. MIDA also does implementation facilitation to get your project up and running after your approval. We look at post-approval processes, and we liaise and coordinate closely with the state office, state agencies, and local authorities. We also do facilitation in terms of talent. I believe talent is basically a prerequisite and a major decision-making important criteria for potential investors. And MIDA has in-house talent division to look at the potential manpower that you need. Especially, I'm talking about high-skilled managerial, technical, and supervisory positions. And we look at engineering support. You can see we have a local strong supporting cluster that are involved in a variety of support services like fabrication, mold and die, metal casting, stamping. And we match you with these companies in Malaysia when you decide to locate in Malaysia. On the right side of the slide, you can see local sourcing and Lighthouse concept. Lighthouse is basically a new concept that MIDA introduced to work with the multinational corporations in Malaysia, which has a host of vendors under them. And this Lighthouse is basically for the multinationals to look at the vendors and develop them into automation and adopting digital 4.0 industry concepts. We also work with the Federation of Malaysian Manufacturers to do potential local sourcing for you or contract manufacturing. We work with technology collaboration with standardized organizations, standards organization, and technology-based organizations. And finally, we also look at your banking and loan facilitation needs, where we are happy to actually bridge you with local banks. Next slide, please. So this slide is just to amplify what I said earlier on the MIDA overseas office and international presence. It gives you an idea that today MIDA has 20 overseas offices located all around the world, 3 alone in the United States, namely New York, San Jose, and Chicago, and the rest are in Europe and Asia Pacific regions. We also have 12 state offices. If you look at the circle inside, The 12 state offices are basically located in each state in Malaysia to complement and follow up from the overseas leads and investors visiting Malaysia. Next slide, please. Now that I've spoken about the roles and jurisdiction of MIDA, the office that I represent, and basically the function to promote foreign direct investment, here I would just want to spend a little bit time on introducing Malaysia to the people around the world. Malaysia, as you know, is about 32 million people with GDP per capita about 11,000 US dollars. We have an average annual GDP growth about 4.8%, with unemployment rate hovering around 3.4%, notwithstanding last year, which was a tough year for most of us. And we have about 20 public universities and 33 private universities that are churning manpower needs every year. And we also, on the right side, you can take a look. I can draw your attention to the Global Talent Competitiveness Index score. This is basically, Malaysia is among the best in middle upper income countries in terms of talent. And as you can see, in terms of one of those, if I want to highlight, is of ease of finding skilled employees. We are fourth in the world among upper income countries, about 87 points. And in terms of availability of scientists and engineers, we are third. In terms of employability, we are sixth ranked. This is something interesting on a survey done by this Global Talent Competitiveness Index report. And also to share with you, our manufacturing sector is very strong. And therefore, it has contributed almost 85% of total exports. Today, total exports of Malaysia is made up of manufactured goods, majority of it, 85%. And within the manufactured goods, electronics and the electronic industry is the major mainstay of the exports to the world. Next slide, please. So I want to now turn my attention to the business-friendly policies, investment policies that Malaysia has to offer to foreign investment. In terms of equity ownership, today Malaysia allows full ownership for foreign investors in the manufacturing and also selected services sector. We also have restriction-free repatriation policy of your capital, interest, dividends, and profits earned in Malaysia. You are free to repatriate all of this, including income, to whichever countries that you come from. And we also allow a free welcoming policy on expatriates employment for especially key posts, which are key posts that are permanently filled by non-Malaysians as long as their project is there. And for term posts, basically looking at technical posts for allowing the project to be up and running, to set up the project, and also those R&D or any quality engineering fields that you may need foreign people coming in to kickstart the operations between 1 to 5 years. We are also member of the World Intellectual Property Organization. Your investments are safe. Your key technologies are safe in Malaysia. It has been all the while like that. We today host more than 5,000 over foreign companies from more than 50 countries. We have investment guarantee agreement with more than 60 countries, and that includes United States as well. We have a free trade agreement, 7 bilaterally and 7 regionally, including the latest one, which is Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, which Malaysia is one of the member countries. And of course, we are currently under negotiation with the EU, for example, and also pending ratification for the CPTPP agreement. So what does these agreements actually mean for foreign investors is simply because you have tariff elimination or tariff reduction. If you locate your project in Malaysia and export to any of those countries under this agreement, because Malaysia is already a part of this big global market as represented by the free trade agreements, including even within ASEAN, which is called AFTA, the ASEAN Free Trade Area Zone, where you can export and bring in any components and machinery totally free of duties, custom duties. And these are facilitated in all those countries that are under the membership of this free trade agreement. Next slide, please. So this slide, I just want to quickly touch on approved investments trend for US, because I am based in New York. I am primarily targeting American companies today. And for the benefit of all the American folks in the Eastern time zone that I'm speaking right now, you may want to take a look at this slide that shows a 10-year average on approved investments. If you look at 2010, the US investments were pretty high, about $1 billion in the manufacturing sector. But after that, it went down. But one thing interesting is basically looking at the last 2 years in 2019 and 2020. The investments from the US has picked up again to almost $1 billion. And in fact, last year, we had pretty good announcements of key projects that came in and decided to invest in Malaysia, despite it was a tough year for everyone. Next slide, please. So this is basically the strong presence of foreign investments in Malaysia, which includes most of the major countries. You can see Japan is basically ranked #1 foreign investor in Malaysia today. As far as realized investment is concerned, that means these are projects on the ground and companies on the ground currently operating. US is #2. So now you know that the US is ranked second in terms of realized investment in the manufacturing sector. For that, you can see all the companies that I've actually put on the screen to show you flagship companies like Intel and Texas Instruments, Boston Scientific, the Hershey Company, Coca-Cola, Jabil Circuit, Honeywell, to name a few, has operations in Malaysia today. Next slide, please. So this is what I was talking to you about just now, sharing with you about a couple of key projects that have made announcements last year. These are new projects, some of them, and one is an existing company which announced its expansion. All three are from the California region, based in the west coast of United States of America. The one on the top, Lam Research, has announced its location in Penang, in Malaysia, for a new advanced technology production facility in semiconductor machinery. We are proud to host this company and welcome its investment in Malaysia. And the Keysight Technologies is already in Malaysia for a pretty long time and has announced opening of its new test laboratory in Penang. This shows that Malaysia today is not just an assembly hub or production hub, but is also hosting higher value added and higher technology setups, which including testing facilities and laboratory facilities in Malaysia. Thanks to the availability of local talents and engineers, Malaysia is able to actually host this kind of investment. And on the bottom, you can see that this is the latest one last year in June, when the press release was made, where Dexcom, a global leader in continuous glucose monitoring, as announced, is Penang again as their third manufacturing site for continuous glucose monitoring production site. And this is also based in San Diego, California. Next slide, please. So now, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to turn my attention completely into growth areas and opportunities for potential investors. What areas are they can be actually investing in Malaysia today? This slide shows is divided into two sectors. One is the manufacturing, another one is services. In Malaysia, we have three major sectors that make up the economy: the manufacturing sector, services, and the primary sector. But opportunities abound mostly in the manufacturing sector as well as in the services sector. In the manufacturing, we have high technology. As you know, I explained earlier, the electrical and electronic industry is the mainstay of the Malaysian economy and contributes largely to our exports. So we would like to continue promoting advanced electronics into here. Malaysia started its industrialization process, in fact, with electronics in more than 50 years ago, when Intel is one of those major companies that decided to invest in Malaysia, and also that too in Penang. And Penang has grown to become a cluster for electronic industry, contributing to 8% of total output or production of semiconductor chips in the world. And Malaysia is overall contribute 13% of total semiconductor chips. So moving forward, the US announcement of the EV industry, and this bodes well for semiconductor chips and fabrication to be undertaken in Malaysia. And we welcome that. We have a very, very strong local supporting cluster to actually support the foreign investments in this area, because of our 50 years industrialization process, we have actually many companies that set foot in Malaysia, with National Semiconductor being one of the very first one, the subsidiaries of Fairchild Semiconductor back then in the 70s, and also Intel. Many of the engineers left and set up their own local shops, local companies that actually today present a very strong cluster for electronics. Machinery in equipment is another industry that we are promoting today. Oil and gas, definitely, because of Malaysia's resources in this area, and together coupled with the specialty chemicals and downstream. We are also promoting very much the downstream part of the oil and gas industry, which comes into the chemicals production facilities. We have many companies today, world-class companies doing production in chemicals. And one of it basically is Cabot Corporation, Eastern-based United States company who have been in Malaysia for many years and have in fact expanded last year into specialty chemicals and elastomers. And we are proud to host them today in Malaysia. We also promoting a new growth areas in aerospace and medical devices. Medical devices, as many people know today, the healthcare industry is a very strategic importance, and Malaysia has been proud to host companies like Boston Scientific doing catheters and orthopedics products, and Abbott Laboratories, another American-based company, B. Braun, a very strong and big German-based company in Malaysia in medical devices, just to name a few. We focus also on aerospace activities in maintenance, repair, and overhaul. We are number 2 in Southeast Asia after Singapore. And we have also promoting food technology. There's opportunities abound in high value-added food ingredient products. You can see earlier, Hershey and Coca-Cola are one of the large F&B-based companies in Malaysia today. We are also, there's opportunities for pharmaceuticals and advanced materials, which can be produced in Malaysia, and all of these are primarily for exports. On the right side, in the services sector, I would like to turn attention on the opportunities in tourism and hotel, especially resort-based projects. We welcome from foreign investors. We have Legoland, which is today run by and owned by foreign company. And also we would like to promote R&D services, which are higher value added, because Malaysia has moved up to a certain value chain. Green technology, ICT services, the e-commerce is a booming industry today. And finally, of course, for many countries, especially on companies from a distance like North America or Europe, you may want to look at a regional headquarters setup in Malaysia, which is really very, very strategically located in the heart of ASEAN, between China and India, to serve your market in not only Southeast Asia, but also looking beyond in Asia Pacific, and also even in other parts of the world. Today, we are hosting many multinationals that have been undertaking key functions in Malaysia, and we call this as a principal hub activity, and that's an opportunity for you. An example of it is, of course, Honeywell, who has manufacturing operations in Malaysia, and have also decided to locate its principal hub in Malaysia, serving the markets around it. Next slide, please. So I've talked a long time and focused on the opportunities for investors in Malaysia, in the respective industries. So what are the steps that you may want to undertake as you go on step by step to look at your investment? The first step and basic preliminary setup is a representative office or regional office. MIDA can help you approve this kind of setup for initial 2 years, the first 2 years. For you to come to Malaysia, just have a tenancy agreement and set up an office space. We even give visa facilitation for those of you interested to come yourself and be stationed in Malaysia, looking at market opportunities, not just in Malaysia, but also regionally. That's why we call it as a regional office, to look at other opportunity in ASEAN. So this is basically a first step Normally, a lot of companies undertake these market feasibility studies, but this office is a non-profit entity. It should not be doing any profit, but just as a survey office. Of course, once you have decided on your business and you graduate or would like to upgrade it further, you may think of a production facility or a R&D hub, which I talked to you about earlier, where the government of Malaysia is prepared to give you and offer facilitation and incentives for those kind of activities. And finally, of course, the principal hub or operational headquarters that you may want to take a look. Next, please. So the tax incentives that we offer are basically between 5 to 10 years. It is in the form of pioneer status or investment tax allowance, which are both mutually exclusive. Investors only have to choose one of them, not both. And it's ranging between 5 to 10 years, either partially or full tax exemption, depending on products. Here in Malaysia, we give tax incentives primarily based on the product itself that you intend to produce in Malaysia. So this is basically divided into general products, which we promote, or high technology products, or even some activities or product that we consider as the strategic importance to the country. So that's how it's differentiated. Of course, over and above this, we also have customized incentives, which can be considered on a case-by-case basis to every company, depending on its business proposition to the government of Malaysia, namely to MIDA. Next slide, please. So this is basically another set of tax incentives recently announced in 2021 budget, which was late last year. Among others, it introduced incentives for pharmaceuticals, Global Trading Center, which I was talking to you about the regional headquarters. And we want to attract companies to come in and set up the trading procurement setup in Malaysia. And also we introduce incentives for services sector, extending principal timeline for incentive for services sector, to name a few among the fiscal incentive. In terms of non-fiscal incentives, we have introduced some added value-added activities for the free trade zone and licensed manufacturing warehouse. That is an activity that is basically in the free trade zone. So Malaysia allowed more activities for this. And then in June 2020, our Prime Minister of Malaysia announced Malaysia as to continue attracting foreign investors, because it was a tough year because of the pandemic. We introduced tax incentives between 10 to 15 years for any project seriously looking at relocating from any other countries to Malaysia. I think a lot of businesses has been disrupted by the global supply chain disruption caused by the pandemic. So we are basically offering tax between 10 to 15 years for projects that has a capital investment between 300 to 500 million ringgit, and that is under local currency, which comes to about basically 70 million to 120 million US dollars. And this is timeline between July 2020 until December 2022. Next slide, please. So in terms of international standing, Malaysia is ranked number 2nd in global competitiveness among ASEAN countries, and also trade connectivity in Southeast Asia. This is by DHL. And second in terms of ease of doing business within ASEAN, according to the World Bank Doing Business Report in 2020 again. And also fourth in terms of handling COVID-19 crisis last year. This was based on an interesting research and survey done by Singapore-based Black Boss Research and Toluna Company in 2020. And we were also 5th in terms of most attractive emerging economies as key destination for investment under UNCTAD. Next slide, please. So in terms of COVID-19 cases, these slides, I don't want to delve in this, but this is just for your information in terms of the number of cases and the new deaths recorded and active cases. This was compiled as of 16 March last month, but Malaysia is, as you can see, we try to control the deaths, especially now by not increasing it in the region. Of course, other countries are doing also well to contain and take up undertaking their respective measures. Next slide, please. So this is a new initiative by the government of Malaysia, in particularly initiated by our department called the Malaysian Investment Development Authority, MIDA again, where I come from. We work closely with the Ministry of International Trade and Industry, as well as the Ministry of Health and Immigration, to introduce a one-stop committee to facilitate business travelers' entry into Malaysia. We realized that with the lockdown and with the control movement order that was imposed due to the pandemic, businesses are affected. But Malaysia definitely ensures that businesses are not affected, at least for foreign investments, as far as we are concerned, and to facilitate their entry either through a long-term basis or short-term. We differentiate between the number of days. Long-term is anything beyond 14 days, and short-term is below 14 days. We have those cases that we have considered since 2nd October 2020. About 7,800 persons has traveled into Malaysia on the long-term basis, and 73 people on the short-term, which is less than 14 days. And we even created a My Entry system portal for investors or businessmen to fill up the application in this portal, and for them who are looking to enter Malaysia. And we have launched a safe travel website just recently on 3rd of March 2021, which went on live. And I encourage all of you to look into this website before, if you have intention to travel into Malaysia. Next slide, please. So this is basically what I said, the One Stop Center Committee, live since 3rd March 2021, a dedicated microsite, live since 3rd March again, and another one which is called the Business Traveler Center. It's a business lounge that is currently operational since 14 March 2021. I think Malaysia did this very new. We even have a center to welcome investors when they touch down at the Kuala Lumpur International Airport. They go right into this business lounge and do their testing for COVID. And if they are okay, within 2 hours or 3 hours, they get their results. We will accompany them to wherever they want to go and give quarantine exemption assurance for these business travelers. Next slide, please. So this is on the top left, you can see safetravel.mida.gov.my. I want you to encourage all of you to go into this website and take a look at what I said about entering into Malaysia as a business traveler during times like this, during COVID. So basically, you can get quarantine exemption if you fulfill or fit into the criteria of what as a short-term business traveler is. For more details, you have to go into the website. Next slide, please. So this is how the Business Traveler Center look like. It is already currently operational in Malaysia. When you come and touch down at the Kuala Lumpur International Airport, this is an initiative by my department, MIDA, as well as the Ministry of International Trade and Industry. We welcome business business travelers. And this basically will be facilitated by welcoming officers and also health facilitation for your PCR testing for COVID, all in-house. And we even have amenities like food and beverage and resting lounges for you while you wait your result. And then if you are negative, then you are exempted and you can do your business itinerary, continue to do the business itinerary. Next slide. I will end this presentation today with a slide to show you that Malaysia is open for business. And all of you, if you have any questions, you can contact me at my office phone number, which is indicated on the slide, or cell number, or even the email. And for the rest of you who have any questions, please feel free to ask me after this. Thank you very much.